with a new head coach, expectations are high, but in order to get through this tough schedule, these four players are going to need to have bounce back seasons.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side in it, and as a big fan of Monopoly Go, it's a mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. On today's episode, I'm going to give you four names, all players who need to have bounce back seasons for different reasons. I'll explain who those four are. And then I'm going to end it with more TJ Power talk because that's what everyone wants to get into. So let's jump into today's episode. Everyone knows about Thomas Castellanos. Everyone knows about Lewis Bond and Kai Robichaux. And you know the stars of this team. But who are players now that the spring is over? Jeff Hafley is on his way to, he's with Green Bay now. He just finished his first draft with the Packers, and Bill O'Brien is here, and he is instilling his culture and putting together his roster the way that he sees fit. And that begs the question, going into next year, you have players that you expect to do well, Who are some players that need to bounce back, have better seasons? And it could be for a variety of reasons. I'll explain as we get to each one. So the first player, the biggest one, and the title of this episode that needs to have a big bounce back year is Donovan Ezeiruaku, who is now a senior edge rusher for the Eagles. And I want to make this clear. When I say he needs a bounce back year, Donovan Ezeiruaku was arguably Boston College's best defender last year. His numbers didn't dictate the play that he played, though, because you only had that game against Virginia where he had a couple sacks. Other than that, he went from 8.5 sacks to 2 sacks. That's a pretty precipitous drop off for Ezeiruaku. And if you look, I'm going to put up on the screen, so hopefully you're watching along on YouTube. Here's his Pro Football Focus grade. You can see the difference from last year to this year. It's not a huge drop, and as I said, he played pretty well. He had a grade of 78, but last year, you look at 2022, the expectations leaving that year for Ezeiruaku were sky high. And maybe it was unfair, but maybe it wasn't, because he should have been your star defender, and he really wasn't. He didn't make those sacks that you had. You look at his pass rush grade, it's a 73.1. You need better than that from your star rusher. I don't have what Harold Landry or Zach Allen would be, but they were probably mid-80s or low 90s. And you hope that Ezeiruaku can get that grade back up, because he was good against the run. He had a run grade of 80.8. He had his moments. I look at that game against SMU in the Fenway Bowl, and who made the play to set the tone in that game? It was Donovan Ezeiruaku with the strip sack. That was kind of shows that he has that potential here. BC's defense is going to be very different this year. You have Azar Abdul-Rahim and Sean Duggan are both gone. You now have Tim Lewis and an entirely different defensive line. He's got a different positional coach too. Jeff Comisiong is his new defensive line coach. He's put together very good defensive lines, the ones that you remember in Boston College's history. If they can get back to the potential that Ezeiruaku had exiting that 2022 season, that's going to immediately make BC's defense go to that next level. It's almost like saying that Ezeiruaku was fine last year, because he was fine. He was good, but he wasn't excellent. And he has the potential to be excellent. And I think that is what we're saying for a bounce back year. Like, when your floor is good, your ceiling should be excellent. And that's what Ezeiruaku has in him. So I think he is a prime candidate. And honestly, you could see a huge difference in the BC defense this year if Ezeiruaku can double his sacks from last year. Maybe get back to what he was in 2022. That's going to make everything easier out there for everyone else. So he's my number one. Next, it's a little different. And I'm not even going to put stats up there because it's not even worth bringing up what his stats were because it was a completely personal reason. And that's Bryce Steel. Bryce Steel was a 4-star recruit. He was a safety linebacker, Jeff Hafley's favorite, right? Taking those safeties and turning them into linebackers that BC landed a couple years ago. In 2022, he played. As you see in this picture on YouTube, he had a strip sack against Syracuse. Last year, something happened, and we don't know what it is because he's not talked about it, and he'll talk when he's ready. But it was a medical reason that caused him to miss the whole year. But he's back. We saw him at practice. I saw him at practice this spring. He was practicing with his teammates, and I don't think you saw him in the spring game because he hasn't gotten to that level yet. So, he missed a whole year. He's got to kind of get himself up to speed. Speaking of speed, if he gets back to the level he was in 2022, you got something here. Mitch Wolf of Eagle Insider, who you guys have heard on the show, says that Bryce Steel is the best linebacker on this roster. He's fast. He's got elite speed. He's good. He's instinctive. He's got those edges that you need in a linebacker. So his 2023 didn't show up at anything. It was a redshirt year for a personal medical reason. But if he can bounce back to what he was like in 2022, your linebacking group all of a sudden is starting to look good, right? It's starting to look a lot better because last year the hope was that Cam Arnold would be that guy. Cam Arnold is fine. He's not a superstar, but if you have him there again next to a guy like Bryce Steel who can make a lot of plays, then you got something going. And then you add in Davion Crouch, who I'm not putting on this list because he's just figuring things out and getting his role started. You now have 3 intriguing linebackers with Bryce Steel having the highest ceiling. Again, I want to temper expectations because no one knows what happened to Steel and how much that's going to impact his recovery and what Bryce Steel we're going to get back when he gets back on the field. Will he be able to get to the level he was in 2022? Or is that unfair? Like if he had something that was significant, then maybe he won't. I mean, like, look at Mark Herzlich, right? Mark Herzlich had Ewing sarcoma. Before that, he was the best linebacker in the ACC. He was ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He came back. He wasn't the same. He wasn't the ACC Defensive Player of the Year level, but he still was really good, right? I'm not saying whatever the health thing is with Steele, I don't know what that is, but will he be the same from a couple years ago? That is something worth watching. And if he can bounce back to that level, that's a huge pickup for Boston College. It's almost like adding a transfer to your team because this was a guy you didn't have last year. Now you have him. Now, in our final segment, I have a player who needs a bounce back year because he's getting a specific position change that I think is interesting to watch, and a player that came in as a transfer that is looking to find his mojo again. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. I love the baseball home run prop bets. If you got a guy that's on a tear, a guy that's been hitting the ball really hard, you can just throw a couple dollars on that, and the odds are always really exciting. And just find your favorite player. Maybe Otani's having a tear, or someone on the Red Sox is doing really well. That's what you do. And that's $150 you can get with the new sign up bonus on FanDuel. So bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. And we're talking about players that need to have big bounce back years. And this is not, as again, I want to make sure that this is clear. I am not trashing any of these players. Like, I don't want people to think, like, oh, AJ is ripping so and so. That's not the point of this. It's seeing guys that had maybe years that you didn't expect them to have and looking at where they could go from there. Now, the next player that I thought, hey, this is a player that I still feel hasn't, that we've seen glimpses of, that could bounce back, that could have a better year, is Jaylen Chic. Jaylen Chic played a bunch of different positions over the last a bunch of different cornerback positions, interior, exterior. He's been bitten with a little bit of the injury bug. He played 10 games last year, and I believe he missed a big chunk of 2022. This year looks to be a new page for Cheek, though, because Bill O'Brien and Tim Lewis, the new defensive coordinator, have a new situation for Cheek to play in, which is he's a safety. Now, if you ask me, I think he's a free safety. If I know my football enough, I think he's going to be a free safety. This is going to give him a chance to play because the safety position for BC has been reimagined. We saw Cole Batson sit out most of the spring, and I believe it looked like due to an injury. You saw Bug Jones get some time out there. You're going to see Cameron Martinez from Ohio State come in. KP Price, who's a youngster that's going to get a chance to play, and Cheek. Cheek was out there with the ones at safety a lot. When you watch the scrimmage, if you ever got a chance, maybe you're a part of the Gridiron Club and you got to see the scrimmage, Cheek is usually the first group of ones that go out there. Sometimes they cycle guys in and out. Cheek was usually like the starting group. And maybe this is what he finds that gives him the success that, many had hoped. This is a kid from New Jersey. I know Halfley was really excited when he came in. About the potential that he could bring in. He just hasn't had a chance to do it consistently. He's got, when he had like 20 something tackles last year, he had 3 pass breakups. This is his chance. This is his chance to bounce back to the level of what we expected as a recruit. Because I feel like Cheek could be a guy that plays every down, that plays every game. He's just going to be out there. So health is going to be a big piece for Cheek. Can he do it? I feel like he thinks he could, and that's exactly what you need, right? So he's one. And then my final player, we got to flip it over to the offensive side of the ball. And I picked a player who is new to the roster. But if you look at his statistics in the last couple of years, because he's been around for a while, a bounce back year would be very clutch for him, and that is Kamar Morales. Kamar Morales is a tight end from UNC. He should be a starter this year. He owns the record for the most touchdowns by a tight end in UNC history. But if you look at his statistics and his Pro Football Focus scores, it shows a trend towards the downward. So you look at his scores. I got him up on the screen on YouTube again. And he dropped pretty hard between 2022 and 2023. He had a 4.5 in 2022 and then a 48.5 last year. Now, that partially was because there was another tight end that took his spot. He was kind of in and out a lot. But when you're talking about a tight end with the history that he has, I mean, you look at the rest of his grades, they're pretty good, right? You would hope that he can bounce back to one of those seasons. He's an older, experienced tight end. Halfway say what you will about what he did with this program. He was smart to bring in a guy like Kamar Morales because you now have a veteran tight end who's done this for a long time. But as you can see by his grades, it went down quite a bit. So a bounce back season for Morales seems like a, a must because you're going to have Jeremiah Franklin, who's now a junior behind him, Matt Reagan, who's a redshirt sophomore, waiting to get some snaps as well, and he's a guy that saw a lot of during spring, and I thought he looked pretty good. But I think the focus is going to be on Morales. Morales, this is his year. This is his chance to end his college career the way he wants to. And BC, I felt one piece that BC's offense kind of lacked last year, and this is not to rip on Franklin, was just a safety blanket type tight end that Thomas Castellanos could get the ball to. Like there would be times where he would be, Franklin could do it, but it was never the consistency we saw with like Hunter Long or when you're watching the NFL, those tight ends like Kelsey and those guys are otherworldly, but there's reliable tight ends that you can get the ball to. And I feel like that is the thing that Morales is going to do. He's not going to be spectacular. He's not going to be like a Gronk, right? I'm going with like the big names right now, but just kind of help give you examples. But he's going to be every bit as consistent as you hope to be, and that's what you're going to need is that consistency. Now, in our final segment, let's kick it over to basketball. Let's look at TJ Power, and there's more news. I'll explain my crystal ball. I'll explain what happened with him on Tuesday and where things stand with the big man. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there is so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends, cool new pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis to taunt your friend. Ha! I got your money. Ha! That's what Monopoly Go is all about, right? Taunting those friends. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting with everyday challenges that you can join and tournaments that you can go into as well. A ton of their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider. If you have not checked that out, come over to Eagle Insider today. We have a ton of good information up on the site, all about everything that you want to know about. And the one thing everyone is asking about, the news item that everyone wants the updates on is TJ Power, the forward from Duke, the number 54 recruit from last year's class, a 5-star who is from Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, that not to put unfair expectations on him, a lot of folks are hoping will be the future of Boston College basketball. And so we heard yesterday, and I'll give Brett Ryder of Eagles Daily credit for this because he's the one that broke it, that TJ Power was going to be taking a visit on Tuesday. And based off of videos and everything I had heard, he was definitely on campus. And I love some of the sickos actually went out and looked for him, found him. And if you're on YouTube, you can see him here. He's with Earl Grant and a couple of the other coaches at one of the libraries. So he was there. Now, that remains the question, like, is BC going to be able to close the deal on him? Now, if you follow me on Eagle Insider, you know I placed a crystal ball for him, and I'll explain why. I've heard very good things. I'm going to leave it at that. That the odds are very, very good that he's going to end up at Boston College. If you're a VIP, you've seen what Beacon Street Ball said. I'll leave that behind the paywall. You come over and check that out. But I feel very good that Earl Grant has landed his big time transfer. And that's going to make next year fun if that's the case. This is a guy who is local. He can score. He can shoot. He can do a lot. He's big, and he's going to be exciting. So he has not announced it yet. I've heard very good things that it's pretty much done, but we'll have to wait to see if that's the case. But I think a lot of folks are really excited about this, and it really kind of goes to show you how a winter can or spring can go for college basketball in this transfer portal world. Just 2 weeks ago, and I still got people tweeting it at me, so it's not like a new thing, like it hasn't ended. But people were texting and tweeting at me, "Oh, fire Earl Grant! There's 6 players gone. That's all on him, and this is his fault." And this is now you look at the roster and you're saying to yourself, with Power and Veneer, and there's a couple new guys. I'm going to have the interesting info on them up on the site tomorrow for VIPs that could fill the last 2 spots. All of a sudden, you're looking at this team going, maybe they're not names I know about yet, but this team could be fun next year. And maybe they'll surprise people. Maybe they're going to do what Earl Grant hoped they would do and really shock the world. But we still don't know because, hey, TJ Power hasn't signed yet, or he hasn't announced his signature yet. We have to wait for that. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to keep saying this until it happens. There's a commitment that we're still waiting for football. When it happens, we can talk about it. We're still waiting to see what happens with TJ Power. Hopefully this will be done by the end of the week, is from what I've heard. We'll wait to hear about that. What does he mean? What would the next moves be if he does sign, or if he doesn't? We'll talk about all that. Now, follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Make sure to subscribe and like us wherever you get your podcasts. We're Locked On BC. I give you insider information and excellent analysis. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll do this at 5 days a week. I've done probably more BC podcasts on this show than there are BC podcast episodes, all the other podcasts that ever existed. I'm up to like 900 episodes. It's crazy, but you guys listen to it, and if you guys listen to it, I'm going to keep doing this thing. So follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247 and make sure you come back tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.